The Kremlin is trying to destabilize the situation in Europe through provocations. Russia is actively waging hybrid warfare against NATO countries and the European Union, using political bribery and information campaigns to weaken support for Ukraine. To achieve this goal, the Kremlin deliberately supports radical populist forces.
First of all, we are talking about the intention to create the impression that in European Union and NATO there is no common position regarding both the war in Ukraine and support for Ukraine in this war, and in matters of ensuring that countries do not have any common plans for how to defend against Russia in the event of an attack.
Terrorist attacks, information attacks and sabotage are not all the methods used by Russian intelligence services. A 26-year-old man with dual Russian and Ukrainian citizenship who used to serve in the Russian army was arrested in France after an explosion in a hotel room near Paris airport. He turned out to be a certain Maxime who wanted to blow up a hardware store in Paris, writes Le Monde, citing preliminary data from the investigation. The investigation considers this to be part of the Kremlin's campaign to destabilize the situation in Europe.
Arrested in his hospital room and placed in police custody, he initially denied any criminal intent. Yet after searching his hotel room, investigators found and seized evidence that contradicted his statements. They found forged identity papers, products and materials intended for constructing explosive devices, mobile phones and traces of ammonium nitrate. From an article by Le Monde publication.
The administration of US President Joe Biden is warning its NATO allies that Russia is expanding a covert campaign of sabotage and hybrid warfare against supporters of Ukraine. To counter this growing Russian threat, American intelligence agencies are sharing information with their European partners, which they can use to thwart the saboteurs.
The alleged Russian attack spanned Europe. In March, Britain arrested several suspects after a fire at a Ukrainian-owned warehouse in East London that US officials reported was holding communications gear bound for Ukraine. A warehouse in Spain owned by the same company, also holding communications equipment, was torched as well. David Ignatius, columnist for The Washington Post, from an article by The Washington Post.
9 suspected saboteurs were arrested in Poland. Their target was arms supply lines to Ukraine. Also last month in Berlin, a fire broke out at a plant of a German company owned by the manufacturer of anti-aircraft missiles used by Ukraine. Norwegian authorities have warned that saboteurs could target companies supplying weapons to Ukraine.
This is a sort of blackmail in which Russia seems to make it clear to NATO allies and the European Union that if they continue to provide assistance to Ukraine, they will find themselves in a situation where they will become victims of Russian aggression. Therefore, it is better not to help, it is better not to unite, it is better to live by your own internal interests and think only about yourself.
Analysts are unanimous in their opinion that Putin began to panic after the allocation of $61 billion in US aid to Ukraine. After Washington approved the strikes of Ukrainian troops on the border territories of Russia, it was quite expected that the Federation would intensify its provocations. But this will not lead the Kremlin to its goal, since the support for Ukraine by its allies will not stop. Reported by Diana Kolesnik, Victoria Smirnova, UATV News.